Welcome back to our panel discussion, Connected Government, How to Build and Procure Networks for the Future. Sponsored by Hughes and EchoStar Company here on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. Our guests today are Kimberly Hancher. She's the Chief Information Officer at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Tony Bardo is Assistant Vice President for Government Solutions at Hughes and EchoStar Company. Keel Ross is Chief of Telecommunications at the Interior Department. And Bill Lewis, Networks Program Manager in the Office of Integrated Technology Services at the General Services Administration. And Bill, I want to ask the first question of you. I know that the GSA, of course, has follow-on contracts planned for networks and EIS. These are all coming on. And without trying to get too specific, I think the question is, what are the methodologies GSA uses to kind of keep it a future picture for itself to know what might be in these services and contracts whenever they come up?
The way I think about these things, and others within GSA as well, is kind of based on some professor, Sheena Angvar from Columbia University, and she talks a lot about choice. And here's her thesis, that lots of choice is really appealing. But lots of choice, in fact, too much choice is debilitating. Let me give you an example in acquisition. Let's say you want to deploy VoIP in your agency. The first thing you've got to do is decide how you're going to deploy it. Is it going to be based on your customer prem, putting equipment on your own prem, or are you going to buy it as a hosted VoIP scenario? Or is it some combination of the two? You know, a hybrid of it, so to speak. That's a hard choice. But then you've got to go and decide how you're going to buy it. And just look at the VoIP choices you have today. You've got Network Enterprise, Network Universal, Connections 2, IT Schedule 70, NASA SOUP, DISA, DHS Eagle, and you can go on and on. You can do full and open, and we see that. So you've got a complicated technology choice. You've got lots of acquisition choices, and right there, before you've done one iota of what I would consider real work, deploying your VoIP or designing your VoIP or planning your VoIP, you've got a ton of choices. So fewer choices in government acquisition is actually, in some cases, better. The idea behind contracts like networks or the follow-on EIS is to leverage the buying power of all of government to get a better price. Think about the FAR for a minute. I mean, this is the guidance we use to buy our stuff. It's a 21 megabyte file. It has 1,900 pages. There are 2 columns per page. And the font is 6 point. There are 53 parts or chapters, so to speak. So you've got that complexity. So you've got a complicated technology choice. You've got a complicated acquisition choice. And then you've got to file or follow a 1,900-page document. One of the themes that you're going to see, and one of the criticisms you get from some acquisitions, is that they're complicated. We need to use a principle of simplicity and a principle where limiting some choices may actually reduce the debilitating red tape sometimes that we see in government. Why do things take so long? You're doing something complicated. You've got lots of choices. And you've got a complicated method to follow that. I think what you're going to see, people want to know, when is networks going to be extended? Boy, I'm the networks program manager. I'm the wrong guy to ask. Of course I would want that to happen. Or when EIS is going to be awarded. Whatever date we say is going to be wrong, because things change in government and requirements change, and they're still gathering requirements. But I think what we need to concentrate on is simplicity, and that starts with simplicity in choices.
All right. On that note, Keel, what kind of planning process does the Interior Department use, and I'm presuming you follow the FAR.
Of course.
Those are the table stakes. I've been reading it for all these years. I'm not even past chapter 15. I never realize how far I have to go.
Well, the one that applies to networks is actually chapter 16, FAR Part 16, section 505, and it's embarrassing that I know that. I'm sort of ashamed. That means, but if you think about it, that means there are 15 chapters before it and a bunch of sections before you get to 505. It's complicated.
All right, write that down if you're listening. Okay, so tell us about the interior planning process.
We use sort of the whole gamut of acquisition vehicles, but certainly the networks contract, although there was a lot of effort and planning that went into getting our fair opportunity awarded. Once that happened, I think the simplicity of choices and the simplicity of all of the rules already being followed and being in place because of the networks contract makes that ordering process an extremely simple process for us. It really aids us in being able to order, upgrade, change the services that we have that are existing on networks. And I really want to applaud GSA because they do come out and meet with the customers. Bill's been in my conference room before for an afternoon to discuss what it is we want to see in the future. How does Interior want to see telecommunications go? So GSA, the networks team, is really listening to the customer. And
for Interior, what are your best practices in terms of how you, serialize this? In other words, you've got your applications, or try to figure out what your bandwidth and quality of service and technology needs will be. Do you do that first and then go look for a way to fulfill it, or do they kind of happen simultaneously?
I think it's more of kind of a spiral type of thing, to sort of simultaneously. Although we don't really have a deployment of it outside of a data center, we're really looking at the software-defined networks as we go forward as a way to be more dynamic and choose some of that class of service, that quality of service based on who you are and what you're accessing, more so than these days. It's sort of where you're located, sort of what IP address you're at, and what application determines it. There may be times when we have a large wildland fire community within Interior. Their communication should probably take precedent over, an office email discussing policy. And so if we can, we really feel we need to get to that point is being able to be more dynamic in how we route traffic.
Okay, I was going to say dynamic is the word that seems to come through loud and clear. And Kimberly, for EEOC, again, you mentioned a lot of applications that are driving bandwidth, even though the size of the enterprise isn't changing. So what's your planning process, and then how do you weave that in the technology planning with the acquisition planning?
Well, we talked already a little bit about our data network and the redundant communications that we have coming into each of the field sites, and that makes up our wide area network. But the area for the future that I'm going to be concentrating on is more our voice communications. We have 53 sites with 53 different telephone systems. So I'm pretty sure that if we had a strategy for VoIP, that we might be able to save some money there.
I understand in Nebraska there's still a patch panel. No?
We have a number of centric systems, and let me tell you, they're very reliable. They, they work. And we have moved to VoIP in a few places. GSA supports us in their various regions, and a number of the regions are moving, smartly towards VoIP services that are offered to the tenants in the GSA managed and owned buildings. And so we're looking at each of those opportunities, but really making decisions on a site-by-site basis. And what I like to do is look at our current costs, look at the GSA provided VoIP offer, and also compare it to commercial VoIP offerings. The one thing I know is that I don't want to be a VoIP service provider for my agency because we're just too small.
All right, and Tony, what do you see looking across the agencies that you call on? I mean, what are they looking at, and how are they going about their futures?
One of the things we're starting to see is that the agencies are starting to recognize some of the challenges they have with the bandwidth constraints and the budget constraints. And we're starting to see procurements now, some of them on the GSA schedule, some of them on other contract vehicles. And Bill and Keel make a great point of the fact that there is some choice, in some cases a wide variety of choices, but the fact of the matter is these services that we're talking about, the broadband services, are showing up on different vehicles. Agencies are now starting to think about and actually take action to obtain them. And it's very encouraging. You're seeing competition there. So there's competition in terms of competing technologies, complementing technologies, however you want to put it. And so we're starting to see that the fact that they get it, that adding T1s is maybe sort of a non-starter from both perspectives. What else can we do? And the adaptability of the marketplace is refreshing to see that. And I think you'll continue to see that in the future.
All right, and Bill, I wanted to ask you also, in the time we have left, there is a model, I guess, of when you have many offices and one central headquarters, kind of a hub and spoke feeling to the way an agency is set up. Is that still going to be the model ahead as we get into these new technologies, more wireless, unified communications? Is there still basically a strategy of hub and spoke, or is there some sort of a different architecture emerging for servicing multiple locations?
Actually, we did away with most of our hub and spoke technology even before we transitioned to the networks contract. It was almost 9 years ago we sort of flattened
behind the times
network.
here. Okay.
And that's where the MPLS cloud, that cloud idea, and it certainly, back to resiliency, allows any one particular office to not have connectivity, and yet all of the other offices are likely to still have connectivity. And certainly a backhaul of traffic from a budget perspective, the hub and spoke technology just is no longer efficient.
All right. Same thing, Kimberly, for
Yes.
EEOC,
Yes,
53 offices.
Mesh network is definitely where it's at. And we're finding with our video communications that we're doing more and more across agencies. So, for example, agencies that have a complaint at hearing or an appeal will often conduct video conferences with someone in Germany at a DoD base, and someone in California, and someone in Texas. So video teleconferencing is one of those things. We do it over the internet as our first primary choice, but a lot of the DoD sites have ISDN, so we still have a number of ISDN lines in order to provide that alternate way to connect via video.
And Bill, what about the alternative methods of, say, video conferencing, some free commercial type services out there by software providers that more and more people are using? Do they have a fit in all of this? Can it be secured?
They might. Freemium is a big thing. Like we do a bunch of business on audio conferencing in off the network's contract. I wouldn't say it's huge, but maybe 1% of the business is audio conferencing, and that's available as a freemium service. But you back it up, and there's a long distance charge frequently with that. Here's kind of the issue with acquisition on some of this stuff, like audio conferencing services. 136 agencies buy stuff off networks, and you can get audio conferencing from other vehicles as well. Did we as a government need to make 136 decisions with, I want supplier X for audio conferencing? Part of me wants to say that it would have made sense to make one or two decisions across government for some of these cloud-based core services that can be commoditized. We'll probably get a better price, and we'll save agency contracting officers a lot of time not having to go through that. And maybe offer it as a shared service even, where you bill whoever the shared service provider is. DOI is one, FAA is one, GSA could be one. We do this in our regional model where we don't make people in a multi-tenant building buy 15 PBXs because there are 15 agencies. I think for some of these services like audio conferencing, we can save money by consolidating. how many acquisitions we do, and we can also save money by maybe looking at a few suppliers that are different than the usual suspects.
All right, Tony Bardo, we're going to give you the last 30 seconds just to tell us what things are going to look like in 5 years, 2 years.
They're going to change. And I think that what you're going to see, and we're seeing the agencies, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, some agencies are starting to already recognize that departing from the traditional design of networks with dedicated access lines may be a thing of not necessarily the past, but will be part of a hybrid sort of network approach, whereby it's not all one way or the other. Certainly, the agencies can adapt these services. They don't all look alike. We're listening to that here. Everybody's got their own individual needs. Tailored hybrid approaches to networks, we think, will be the future.
All right, and we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank today's guests. Tony Bardo is the Assistant Vice President for Government Solutions at Hughes and EchoStar Company. Kimberly Hansher, Chief Information Officer at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Keel Ross is Chief of Telecommunications at the Interior Department. And Bill Lewis, Networks Program Manager in the Office of Integrated Technology Services at the GSA. I'm Tom Temin, Federal News Radio, 1500 AM.